No, kedves 11. évfolyam, folytatjuk a kommunista diktatúrát a Szovjetunió létrejötte után. Múlt órán ugye arról beszéltünk, hogy a gazdaságban a Szovjetunió milyen reformokat hozott, és azok, hogy megnyomorították a népet, az általános államosítás, a nationalization az iparban, a széleskörű iparosítás, és beszéltük ugye a mezőgazdaságban pedig a kollektivizálást, az collectivization. Today we are going to speak about the political changes, and these changes mostly came after the death of Lenin. So Stalinist dictatorship, we are going to speak about purges, meghurcolások, meghurcoltatások, terror and the personal cult, a személyi kultuszt. So Stalinist dictatorship. So how he grasped power. First of all, Lenin died in 1924. So right when the Soviet Union was created, he died. And about the death of Lenin, you have to know that before his death, he said that he didn't like Stalin to follow him on in the power. So actually, he didn't really like Stalin. He had a political circle who wanted, of course, the power after his death. And immediately when he died, he was such a hero in the eyes of the communists. His body was embalmed, and this picture is a picture from present time because there is a mausoleum built for him in Moscow, and his body can be visited even today. So he was a greatly respected person, and he is not connected to the terror and the serious losses of the people, but actually I have to say that yes, he was also involved. What happened after his death? Stalin immediately, of course, wanted power. He was very ambitious and put aside all the political rivals. In this picture, you see Leon Trotsky, who was the deputy of Lenin. He was also target. He had to leave the country. He had to leave the Soviet Union. He traveled a lot in Europe and in Latin America. He was he also visited famous artists, like for example Frida Kahlo, and later he was also executed by the Soviet secret police in Latin America. So what happened? There was an immediate fight for power, but Stalin very soon put aside everyone who can be an enemy, and he strengthened his power by the end of the 20s. And well, all along his reign until his death in 1953, terror was sustained. So he introduced to terrorize the society. No one was safe in this period. Even the highest circles got arrested. So very high-ranked people were arrested, and they were executed or sent to forced labor camps. So this is what we call purges. So that he purged the system enemies. So purges against system enemies went through. There were show trials. Please remember this, koncepciós perek. Show trials mean when there is a trial on the court and the outcome of the trial is already written down. So before they say anything, Stalin ordered that this person must be executed after the trial. So the show trial is like that. Of course, for the population to understand what was going on, they created a show that this person is absolutely criminal, but in the truth he wasn't. He was innocent. There were tortures and executions in this period, a very long period in the Soviet Union, and long-term imprisonments. People were sentenced, and of course the forced labor camps, the Gulag, was created. I'm going to speak about later. NKVD is the abbreviation for the secret police. Before that, in the 20s, during the Civil War, it was called Cheka, but I don't want you to remember that. NKVD it became, and later it became KGB after the Second World War. In the picture, there is an execution in the woods, so part of the purges. Interesting picture. The enemies didn't even exist. In the Stalinist era, it was really common that they actually deleted people from pictures. And this means that before the death of Lenin, this is when Lenin is speaking, and here is Trotsky with a friend, and later in the Stalinist era, these pictures were manipulated and they were deleted from the picture as if they had never existed. This is crazy, of course, part of the terror. This picture is about showing how everything resulted in terror, because when they don't have enough money and capital, but they still started investments in industry, and they collectivized all the lands, there was some kind of social disappointment, of course, but terror was the only way people could be frightened. And of course, if they didn't have food, there were no demonstrations because they were shot or taken away. So terror was the answer for all the social and economic problems. This chart is fantastic. Tisztogatások a Vörös Hadseregbe. So in the Red Army during the time of Stalin, look, out of 5 első osztályú hadseregparancsnok, másodosztályú, out of this number, they killed this number. So 6 testparancsnokból 57-ből 50 maradt. 50 were killed, 50-et megöltek, csak 7 maradt. This is why when Soviet Union went into the Second World War, Stalin had no military leaders. This is why the beginning of the war was really unsuccessful for the Soviet Union, because the head of the army was cut off. Going on, forced labor camps, I told you that there was a network of forced labor camps. These dots show how many of these camps they had, and millions of people were forced to work in these camps. This was, for example, a place where it was a bedroom. As you see, this is made of wood, so this is a wooden house in the middle of Siberia, for example. And look at that, the irritating propaganda. There are the famous important political leaders on the wall, so there was always ideological teaching of these people. This is a canteen. Look at the faces. These people had to work long hours, 12, 16 hours a day, and they didn't get much food. What they did, they built everything. They built dams, railway network, and renewed cities, and they mined rocks and everything. So this was really hard work, and many of them died because of low-calorie food. I would like to talk about Alexander Solzhenitsyn. This person could survive the Gulag, and when he survived, he wrote down in the books what happened to him, and he lived until 2008, as you see. And in this picture, President Putin is talking with Solzhenitsyn for a very long time. This person and his works were banned in the Soviet Union, but after the change of regime, he could come back, and his works became really important for historians, and everyone could know what happened. Of course, after terror, we also have to speak about the propaganda and the personal cult, személyi kultus of Stalin. Stalin's personal cult was built around his personality, himself. It was part of the terror because everyone had to praise him. He was said to be the wisest leader. Look at this. He is actually the leader of the world because there is the world map behind him, and a lot of people are looking at him as he could say the truest words. So he had to be praised. Books were written about him, and actually there were many books released in the name of Stalin, so as if he had written them. Scientific books and different educational books and economic books. Of course, there were experts who wrote these books, but it was given out as if it was the works of Stalin. People are listening to him from the radio and they look very happy that they hear the wise leader. Pictures, statues, and of course all kinds of arts like literature was about him. So even in your homes, you had to have pictures like that, with a little child holding white flowers, showing the purity and of course the innocence of Stalin, and he is really happy. Stalin himself was put in the line of the greatest ideologists, Marx and Engels, Lenin and Stalin. This was the row. So he is continuing what the greatest ideologists had started. And of course, in this picture, it's also about propaganda. Look at this YouTube link. There is a Stalin speech in this YouTube link. Please listen to that and try to compare with Mussolini. It's really different. And look at this, even today, BBC News, I found this picture. This is the tomb of Stalin. In Russia, there is a kind of revival of Stalinism, and some people believe that the period of Stalin was really positive. Of course, people don't know much about that, so this is crazy. Some revision. In this picture, collection of pictures, Stalinism and the Soviet Union's policy can be followed. Private property is taken from people, extensive industrialization, so nationalization, industrialization, collectivization in agriculture, of course terror, because everyone can be taken by the NKVD. Religions were hunted, of course, as system enemies. You have to remember that all the enemies of the system had to be annihilated, killed, and taken away. And of course, we also talked about the personal cult. So we can collect the features of this system here. Feladatot tehát, hogy ezt is tedd bele a jegyzetbe, és ne feledd, hogy az előző videóval együtt ez együtt működik, ez a sztálinizmus, hiszen ott kezdődik. Ott van leírva, vagy ott meséltem el a gazdaságpolitikát, ez pedig a politikai változásokat mutatta be. A 184-től 188. oldalon pedig megtaláld ezt az egész időszakot. Mint mondtam, nézd meg a linket, és hasonlítsd össze Mussolinivel, hogy mi a különbség, ez legyen meglepetés. Jó munkát kívánok!